believer in Jesus Christ in recovery for drugs and alcohol. So the lesson for tonight is the 7 reasons we get stuck. Anybody ever get stuck in their recovery? Kind of like a dull point. So yeah, I think it's a real valuable if we, as the year turns, it doesn't have to be this time of year. I like to do it around this time of year because I get reminded by the new year and the Christmas season and all that. Is just take a breath, take a quick breath, just kind of, review. Maybe talk to your sponsor, your accountability people. Just have a little, all right, let's take a little review of where we're at and where we're going. One of the reasons is we have not completely worked through the previous step. Because it may, depending on where you're at in your recovery, maybe you just started, maybe you haven't even started yet. Maybe you've done the steps a few times. But we're all at some point in our recoveries. Maybe we're moving a little too quickly, just kind of glancing over it, especially if you've done them a couple times. Just turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Yeah. That's a big statement if you think about it. That's a huge statement to really think about that. But we can glance over it. Maybe God can restore us to sanity. We can just, or I'm powerless. We can just kind of, especially the first 3 steps, we can really move through them real quickly. And sometimes what happens is we're not prepared for the 4th step. The first 3 steps prepare us for that because it says fearless and thorough, right? When I did my 4th step, when I finally really did these steps in earnest, and I was really dedicated to staying sober, I was at New Life Center. And when I did my 4th step, it was fearless. I was good with it. I started writing at people, especially resentments. I had it done in about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. I had 117 names on my 4th step. The guy in the plaid flannel shirt. I didn't remember his name, but I got in a fight with him in high school. And I didn't remember his name, so, I'm talking to my sponsor. I says, well, I don't remember his name. He goes, what was he wearing? I said, the plaid flannel shirt. He goes, put the guy in the plaid flannel shirt down. That's what I put. I just stuck to it. I did 20 minutes a day for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. But the first 3 steps prepared me. And sometimes we can move too quickly through things. And if you've been getting, and it's not just, getting loaded, I want to say getting loaded, but it's for codependence, people with eating disorders, whatever you're here for. If you got 2 names on your resentment list, you might be going too fast. I remember I did a 4th step with a sponsor. For those of you that don't know, I'm the last of 11 kids. Then I got my mom and my dad. And I had like 15 names on my resentment list. It was very unthorough. I just put all my brothers and sisters down, my mom and dad and me. I didn't even know why. I just put them down there. It was very unthorough. So we can get stuck on these steps and start moving too fast, not do them thoroughly. We want to keep moving. We want to keep moving. Don't get stuck and stop. But we want to have a good pace and we want to do them thoroughly. And a lot of times, for me, what it was for me is the literature, reading the literature, step studies. We do step studies here every year. Sponsorship, staying in touch with my sponsor, because my sponsor was a really good kick in the you-know-what for me when I needed it. Hey, Tim, you're slacking on this or that. You got to get going on it. Galatians 5:25 says, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. And allow God to give us a kick in the you-know-what if we need it, in our prayer, just knowing that we're moving forward. Okay, and the next stuck point we might get to is we have not completely surrendered our will. We have not completely surrendered your will and your life over to the Lord. Again, I'm getting back to step 3. Sometimes we just kind of glance over that one. That's a big statement. And it's a lifetime. It really is. It's a lifetime of doing that. But we need to be cognizant of that we're moving forward in that. Let's see. Well, no. And we'll do a Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. For good judgment and common sense, trust in the Lord completely. Don't ever trust yourself. In everything you do, put God first. And he will direct you and crown your efforts with success. Do you ever hear anybody say, hey, just follow your heart? Does anybody know that the heart's deceptive? Follow my heart, forget about it. We're going to be in trouble. There's going to be trouble. I cannot trust that. I always need to check back with God. A lot of times it's through Scripture. Maybe a pastor talking. You ever go to church on Sunday and you hear the pastor talk? You're like, oh, he's reading my mail. That happens every week for me. It really does. I know if I'm really listening, I know that the pastor is going to be. He's going to be pointing something out. That God's using him to point something out. That I could be doing better, or maybe something that I'm already doing. So, maybe you have not accepted Jesus' work on the cross for your forgiveness. Anybody here tonight, maybe for the first time, this is a Christ-centered recovery group. That's our higher power, is Jesus. And when we work and we make a decision for Christ, we need to accept that. We need to accept that Jesus' work on the cross for my forgiveness. Does anybody have a hard time forgiving themselves? That was probably the hardest person I had to forgive, was myself. All the wreckage I caused a lot of people. In the big book, I know I'm not supposed to, I'm going to say it anyway. Big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about going through people's lives like tornadoes. That's what it was like. Anybody that came, anybody's path I crossed, it was mayhem. They had no idea what was about to hit them. 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins to him, and we depend on, and be depended on to forgive us and cleanse us from every wrong. Every wrong. God will take that away. God has done that in my life. It took some time, and it took stick-to-itiveness with these steps. And what I wanted to, I think the theme for this, and the theme for my recovery, and you probably heard me say this before, is perseverance. Got to stick to it. I got to stick to it. Every morning when I get up, as I go throughout my day, and when I go to bed at night. Ephesians 1:7. All of our sins, not some of them. Have you forgiven yourself? Romans 8:1. Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So if we've given our life over to the care of Jesus Christ, it's done. Jesus did it already. Maybe you haven't forgiven others who have harmed you. Anybody in there, in that category? I know I was stuck on that for a while. There's people that did things to me that, I had to pray. I had to know. I don't know. Maybe they came to later in life made a decision for Christ. I don't know that. I had to forgive myself, and I had to forgive others. I want to get into God's promises. 1 Peter 5:10. After you have suffered a little while, our God, who is full of kindness through Christ, will give you his eternal glory. He personally will pick you up and set you firmly in a place and make you stronger than ever. I went through a few things in my life that I had to, from abuse, major abuse, physical abuse from my dad and my mom. It hit me, just crazy stuff. A lot of you guys have heard the story. I will tell it one more time. Why not? It's because it's my story. It's the only one I got. My dad was a World War II Marine. And if any of you guys have ever met somebody that served back in those days, it was they were a different kind. They were a different breed. They really were. And when I first got in recovery, I had a hard time forgiving him. I was doing my fourth step, my fifth step, sixth and seventh, eighth and ninth, and I was on my eighth doing my steps, and I wrote a letter to my dad. I also had to make amends for stuff I did to him. I used to steal his money. We didn't have any money. I'm the last of 11 kids. We had no money. I used to sneak in the room, take his money, lie, cheat, and steal. I was, the one time that always sticks out to me, I was in third grade, and I was having a hard time reading. Later on in life, I found out I'm dyslexic, and ADD, HD, and all the alphabets after that. That's one test I passed with flying colors. It was in marriage counseling. And but I was having problems reading, so they suggested I get a pair of corrective reading glasses. So I got a pair of those, and I'm sitting at the dining room table. My mom and dad used to make me do schoolwork and at the dining room table every night. And I'm reading my social studies book. My dad gets up from the parlor. He comes in, and he sits across from me. There's like a picnic bench. And a picnic table was our dinner table, became the homework table after dinner. And I had the book up there. And he came in and he put his forearm right here in front of the book. Now, my dad was huge. He had these big Lincoln log forearms. He had his skin on his face and his neck and his arms was a little burnt from flamethrowers, which I later found out later in life. But it looked like he had a really bad sunburn. And he just looked mean. He had these eyebrows that are like this, And he looked at me, he says, "Read." And I started reading. I couldn't read. So he hauls off when he punches me between the eyes. And my glasses got broken, went flying. My nose started bleeding. My mom came running in from the kitchen with a face cloth and put it on my face and was getting mad because I was getting blood on the carpet and making a mess. So she's yanking me into the kitchen, and my dad kept hitting me. And my mom says, I'll never forget, she goes, "Stop that, you're making a mess." I'm just like, as I got older, I had a resentment about that. I wanted to whip my dad's you-know-what. I didn't say it. For all my life. And when I got into recovery, I started learning about this stuff, forgiving people who have harmed me. And in 2005, and some of you who have been around here long enough might remember, a gentleman named Dixie came into our small group, came upstairs and he was 92 years old. We're like, "What are you doing here?" He started sharing about his time in Okinawa. He was in a tank outfit in World War II. So after it was over, I said, "Hey, Dixie, my dad was in World War II. He was in Iwo Jima. That's the only thing we knew." And so he said, "Why don't you come over to the house since you're next to kin? I can get my dad's records." So I went over to his house, filled out the paperwork, sent it in. And about a month later, I got a packet back with a Bronze Star in it, 2 presidential unit citations, a naval unit citation, a letter from a general, a letter from a colonel. My dad was a private first class, Joseph William Miller. And he was a radio guy. He'd go in with the infantry and set up communication. That was his job. And a book with his picture in it. I started reading the book. And you could pick up every once in a while to mention his unit. And his first battle was Bougainville. And he went in with the infantry when they landed, and both the Japanese and the Americans ran out of ammo. They were relegated to fighting with clubs, bayonets, and fists. I'm good, Dad. I'm good. So just about, my dad passed away in 1994, so this was 2005, and I had made amends with him. I had wrote that letter. But by having perseverance, it happened in 2005. It happened 10 years later, 11 years later. That happened. And I was good with it. Me and Dad were good. I was like, I'm sorry I ever talked back to you. I couldn't imagine being like that. He was 23 years old. I couldn't imagine going through something like that. So I had to forgive my dad, and I did, and the forgiveness kept coming in God's time. So I just want to encourage you to persevere. You know, we might have a lot of hurts where people have harmed us, but God's got a different plan, and can make that forgiveness real. And it was tangible. I can touch it. And now I got more good dad stories than anything. So in, 2009, I went to sleep one night, and I was in my house where I grew up. Anybody ever grow up in a real small house, an old house? The door jambs are smaller. You know, you can't get through them. And me and two of my brothers slept in the attic. And there's like a parapet wall on the top of the stairs. And I was dreaming. So I was at the top of the stairs looking down, and the door opened, and this little kid came through and started walking up the steps. It was me. And I was watching him. And next thing you know, I'm the little kid. And I started walking to this top, and I had that fear that I used to have, walking around on eggshells. I'm walking up the stairs, there's something wrong. And I got to the top of the stairs, and my dad was standing at the end of the attic, right by a fan that we had in the window. And I started walking towards him. I got closer and closer and closer. And I could see the face, the veins, and the sunburnt skin, and that look. He's looking at me, and I looked up. He looked down at me, and he said, "Good job. Good job." And I woke up. And I started crying. I woke up crying, and Jen thought I had a nightmare. I started telling her about the dream. She goes, "That's a good dad moment." You know? It's a good dad moment. There's lots of good. Dad was a good guy. He did all right. Have you ever seen that movie, Gran Torino? That was my dad. That's what my dad was like. So, you get an idea. So, you might be afraid of risk and making change in your life. Stepping out. I remember when I first opened up, I'm a painter by trade. When I first started my own business, stepping out. It was tough. It was like stepping off a cliff. I had to go get work. I had guys that were working. I had to pay them. But my recovery was all a part of that. Talking to my sponsor, talking to guys that had been around a while. There's a lot of painters in recovery if you didn't know that. I think there's 3 or 4 in here. There's these little risks that we need to take. We need to step out and making amends. We need to step out and doing the 4th step, the 5th step, wherever you're at. The first 3, making that decision for Christ. It's a tough decision to really do that. Turn my life and my will over to the care of God. Oh, this is a tough one. You may fear intimacy because of fear of rejection or being hurt again. Anybody ever been there? What I've learned when I first started dating Jen is to do it God's way. And that's tough, let me tell you. That's a tougher way to go, but it's the best way to go. Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. Hebrews 13:6. The Lord is my helper, and I am not afraid of anything that mere man can do to me. Oh, an effective support team. Everybody's got a sponsor in here, right? Accountability group, people that we're accountable to. If you don't have one and you don't have an accountability group, there's lots of great things that can be done right here on Friday night. Every time you come in here and you see coffee. Awesome. Unbelievable when you see meals here and all that kind of stuff. People to help clean up, help set up, help make coffee, greeters, Solid Rock barbecue team. There's all kinds of stuff to do. And Proverbs 13:20. Be with wise men and become wise. Be with evil men and become evil. Oh, you don't hang out with the ragamuffins. That's not a cuss word, I swear. Don't be hanging around the ragamuffins. You guys know what I'm talking about. Don't hang out with the losers. Here's another one, Galatians 6:2. Share each other's troubles and problems, and so obey the Lord's commands. Daily action plan. Like I was saying, get up in the morning and, let your knees hit the floor for a minute. Prayer and meditation. Maybe read a paragraph or two to get your mind thinking right. Maybe read a couple verses. Have them throughout your day. Hit other meetings. We don't have Celebrate Recovery meetings. There's other Christ-centered recovery groups all around here. Also, there's AA, NA, OA. There's Al-Anon, CODA. There's meetings for everything. There's great people there. There's a lot of Christians in those meetings. You'll be able to spot them. Closing thoughts. It's about dedication. We gotta be dedicated. We need to work. I don't know, for me to stay sober when I was first getting sober, I had to work a really tight program. I had to be tight, because before that, every time I would stop doing things. I know one guy, he had 21 years. His sponsor died when he had about 17 years. Never got a new sponsor. At 21 years, he got loaded, started drinking. And the next time I saw him at a meeting, it was about 4 or 5 years later. Oh, and he had 7 kids and a wife. And about 7 years later, the next time I saw him, he had green skin. It was literally green. His tongue was all swollen. He had went out and couldn't get back, and he ended up passing away. Another guy used to come here. He had 28 years, and his sponsor had died also. And he never got a new sponsor, and he started getting away from doing this, being disciplined. That's another theme throughout this, is being self-disciplined, having some self-discipline. And I didn't have any. I had to let other people give it to me. I had to follow directions. And this gentleman ended up getting back here. And I think he's got like 5 or 6 years now again. Awesome guy, really good guy. But he had 28 years of sobriety, and he went out. He started drinking and using again. So anyway, self-discipline. I want everybody, my prayers for everybody to be a virtuoso in recovery. Everybody in here. So when a new person walks in here, they're like, wow, there's something different going on in this room. This is good stuff. I wanted to show that as an example. And in closing, I'm going to read a poem. You didn't know I was a poet, huh? Because in recovery in this room, as compared to other rooms, we have Jesus. We have the King of Kings. In this poem, the name of it is One Solitary Life. He was born in an obscure village, the child of a peasant woman. He grew up in another obscure village where he worked in a carpenter shop until he was 30. He never wrote a book. He never held office. He never went to college. He never visited a big city. He never traveled more than 200 miles from the place where he was born. He did none of those things, usually associated with greatness. He had no credentials but himself. He was only 33. His friends ran away. One of them denied him. He was turned over to his enemies, and he went through the mockery of a trial. He was nailed to the cross between 2 thieves. While dying, his executioners gambled for his clothing. The only property he had on earth. When he was dead, he was laid in a borrowed grave through the pity of a friend. 19 centuries have come and gone. And today, Jesus is the central figure of the human race and the leader of mankind's progress. All armies that ever have marched, all navies that have ever sailed, all parliaments that have ever sat, all the kings that ever reigned put together have not affected the life of mankind on earth as powerfully as the one solitary life. That's who's in charge of our recovery. Let's be virtuosos. Did I say that right? Virtuosos. There we go. Perfect. God bless you all. Thank you.
Santa Cruz Celebrate Recovery meets every Friday night at 7 p.m. We're located at Christian Life Center, 1009 Mission Street in Santa Cruz, California. If you live near Santa Cruz or just visiting the area, we warmly invite you to attend. To learn more, you can visit our page on Christian Life Center's website at clcsantacruz.org/celebrate-recovery. We hope this video has been encouraging to you, and thank you for watching.